Hi, I'm Christina, and I have really bad video quality, so I apologize for that. Here in North Carolina, working on my BCBA. I'm an RBT and a special education teacher. I've been in the field for 16 or 17 years. And when I started, we started with paper and pencil graphing. And I would come home after hours of graphing covered with graphite on my hands, and like you touch your face and like you have graphite on your face and like smudging with paper pencil everywhere. And it was very messy and time consuming. And, advances in computer technology and acceptance of, using technology to graph data has led to, you know, uh, more standardized programming for collecting data, but some people still prefer to do their own graphing, either on paper and pencil or, having more simplified data collection and graphing methods that they create themselves. So if you're in a situation where you don't have a standardized graphing convention that you normally use, and you need to start from scratch, here we are. So I went to ABAI Boston in March, and there was a session that I took with Deochand, and he is a master at graphing. But he went really fast, and my computer wasn't working that day because I had a Chromebook, and Chromebooks and Excel are not compatible that much. So I didn't realize that I was going to need a different computer. So in any case, I had to go back, and he does have a lot of stuff on social media and accessible papers and things that he's written on graphing and, step-by-step introduction to and, instructions on how to graph. But some of the things are very lengthy and a lot of information. And like I said, I'm much slower than the pace that he was going at. So I'm just making this video for people who might be interested in doing something a little bit more than just your simple line graph on Excel, and learning how to put phase change lines embedded in the data so that they come up automatically, and things to make your graphing life a little bit easier so we can spend more time focusing on instruction and, interpreting data rather than just graphing it. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is a template that Dr. Deochand made. I think he's a doctor. I'm pretty sure he's a doctor. In any case, Neil, that he made to help his students learn how to graph and use Excel. So I'm going to be going a little bit, according to kind of the scope and sequence that he used, but I'd be changing things up a tiny bit. So select the data, insert the graph, insert the phase line and the phase label, adjust chart elements for readability, analyze data, create template. So the way I like to do it is I like to start with the data first. Obviously, you cannot create a graph without data. But, really think through how you want to collect your data and all this other stuff. Get that started. And then after that, you're going to insert your graph. And then I don't mess with phase lines until I adjust the chart elements. So for me, adjusting the chart elements is more important than the actual formatting of the chart, because it throws me off to see everything like not how I like it. So again, that's up to you if you want to adjust your chart elements first or adjust your formatting first. So either way, but let's start. I'm going to introduce a new sheet and just start from scratch. So here we are. When I first started Excel, again, I'm from the Apple Macintosh generation. So growing up, I learned how to type on a typewriter, and I had, a Macintosh computer with like a black screen and green font and letters on it. And, computers were not widespreadly used until I was in college. I still have some college papers that were written, in typewriter as well as computer written with the dot matrix printers, which if you're from my generation, you'll know what that is, but it was so annoying in the school library and you had to pay per page. But in any case, I digress. Starting with this blank Excel sheet was very, very nerve-wracking for me, like intimidating. So first thing I do when I open up an Excel spreadsheet is I want to put my date in. So I just start in A1. I'll have my date label here. And just for, whatever, we'll do 6/2/22, or we can do 2022. And, some of this information might be easy for you to and I might be going too slow for some people and I might be going too fast for some people. So I apologize. It's really hard to know what everybody needs. So I'm just going at the pace that I would have liked somebody to do it for me. And that's all I can do. So I'll just pull this down and you'll see here, there's some craziness happening with the pound sign. Typically that's caused by the date not being formatted in those boxes. So what I'm going to do is click on the entire column. I'm going to right click or double tap and I'm going to do format cells and I'm going to do date under the number and choose the date format that I would like. So I prefer to use the standard standard date that's on the top. And so now those hashtag signs have disappeared and now we have a good date. And the other thing that I like is I'm really OCD about things being in the center. So I like to format my entire sheet to be in the center. And that makes me happy. And now I can move on with my life. So the next thing I'm going to do is my session numbers. So I'm going to start with session 1, but do not put anything in this box. Sometimes if you put something in that box when you try and create a chart, it'll read the session numbers as data and not as labels. So the one tip that helped me a lot was don't put anything in that box. And of course you could use the date as a label also, but if you do, I would still err on the side of caution and leave instead of writing date, I would just leave it blank and then start labeling your data so that so that when it automatically populates your chart, that it understands what's the data and what's the labels. But in any case, if at any time anyone wants to pop on the bottom and, give me some feedback or some tips and tricks or whatever, please do, because I'm making this video mostly to help myself understand the process. And if I can explain it, right, I can teach it, then I know it, right? So that's part of it, is getting more fluid with being able to describe it and to execute it. But also, I genuinely would love to know more about how other people graph and the things that they've learned along the way and, see if I can improve my graphing and make it, again, more streamlined and more effective and more efficient so we can get back to what we actually need to do, which is working with our clients. All right, so I'm going to start with session number 1, and let's say we're going to label this sheet, we're going to rename it manned. So our title is going to be manned, and this is going to be phase 1, and this is going to be phase 2. This is also for my BCBA Deochand so that she can learn what I learned at ABAI in Boston, and to show her that I've been working really hard on my graphing techniques so that, again, I can share that with her and maybe she can learn something from me. All right, so for example, whenever I do baseline, I always like to highlight it. So let's say he got a 0 for baseline. I'm going to change that to yellow. So I know it's a baseline, and so I know after the baseline, I'm going to have a phase change. So the first phase line is going to be at 100. Why? Because I'm using 100%. So your phase change should be whatever your maximum ceiling is for your data. So I know that I'm doing it out of 100%. So if I have 10 trials, it'll be 100%. If I have 20 trials, it'll be 100%. So that number is never going to change. And for me, I just like the standard of having that 100%. Some days you may not be able to get all those trials. So Some days you might get more, some days you might get less. You know, and there's something to be said about the inconsistency of that data collection. But again, you know, we all have to make a decisions on how we want to run our programs, and that's a discussion for another day. But at least with 100%, I know that, you know, it's standard, and we can be more flexible with the data. So here in phase 1, we have our ceiling at 100, and that's going to be our baseline phase change. And let's say on session 2, the first day of teaching, he got a 20%, session 3, and then here we can actually just delete this. But again, you can input the dates as you go. I mean, the dates are just for me, so I don't include them in the data. But again, if you want dates on your graph, you can choose to do that, but I don't. I think it looks messy. All right, so what I'm going to do here is do 1.5 for the phase change, so that the graph will be sensitive to the positioning of where we want the line, because we don't want it to overlap a data point. We want it to be in between the data points. So here's session 3, and he got a 50. Session 4, oops, he got a 30. Session 5, let's say he got a 75. And then let's say we decided we wanted to do a probe. And let's say we wanted to do our probe. We wanted to separate our probe with a phase change line. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, it's up to you and what you think it makes the graph look the clearest. But let's say we wanted to put another phase change line, and let's say the baseline line that I use is usually a solid line, and the phase change line that I use for differentiating different conditions will be a dotted line. So once we format it, it's going to continue to always put in a dotted line under a solid line under phase 1 and a dotted line under phase 2. If you only want one type of line, you only have to put in a phase 1, right? You don't have to have 2 separate lines if you don't want them. Or if you want different types of lines for whatever reason, you can put unlimited phases in and just change each type. So here we go. We're going to do 5.5. And remember that, so that it'll be in the middle of the 2 data points, 5 and 6. Oops. And we're going to have our phase 2 line at 100, because that's our ceiling of our data. And session 7, we're going to do, sorry, I went the wrong way. Session 6, we're going to do 30. No, let's do a 40. Session 7, we can do a 60. And, oh, hold on, let me go back. This is going to be our generalization probe. So again, if you want to differentiate it on your data collection sheet, you can decide that generalization probes are orange, so that you can discriminate them from the raw data as opposed to on the graph. But on the graph, we'll just change the symbol. And so then you're going to have a phase change line here, because again, we've decided that we think it'll be clearer if we do a phase change line on either side of the generalization probe to show that the condition is changed, in addition to having the symbol change. But again, it's up to you how you want your graph to look. Here's session 8. We can do 80%, and then session 9, we could do 90%. And I think that will be sufficient. All right, so we have, let's go back over it. Session 1 is our baseline. We coded that in yellow so that we always know what our baseline is. Session 1.5 is going to be the position of the baseline phase change line, which is a solid line. Session 2 was the first session of teaching. And so from 2 to 5, we have our teaching sessions, 20, 50, 30, 75. Session 6 is going to be a generalization probe, which was 40%. And we're going to put 2 phase change lines, dotted ones, around that condition to show that it's different than the teaching condition. Again, you don't have to, but just to show you how we do two phase change lines, I'm going to include that, but I don't typically do that. I will just put the triangle in, so because the triangle for me speaks for itself, but again, depending on what your conventions are, you might change that. And then this phase change line is going to show we're back to teaching, right? So 60, 80, 90. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is highlight our data. So again, nothing in this box, highlight the data that you want on the graph. And I'm just going to include sessions that we haven't done yet. It might populate them, it might not. So when I first started doing Excel graphs, I learned that I should go to insert, I should go to line chart, and I shouldn't do one of these like line with markers chart. But Neil does not like them for various reasons that he explains if you want to watch the 2-hour version of this. And I agree with him, so I will not be using those lines. I'm going to use the scatter with straight lines and marker because it's more sensitive to data changes than the other types of charts. So here we are. So the first thing you'll notice is we talked about how our ceiling for the phase change lines is 100, but you'll see that the ceiling on this chart is 120. Also, you'll see that we have increments of 2 on the x-axis. Maybe I don't want 2, maybe I just want 1 because we're only doing 10. So depending on how you want your graph to look, you're going to make these changes. So again, it drives me crazy that Excel always has everything starting in gray, and I can't stand these grid lines in the back because they drive me bananas. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the grid lines. It's just like bothers my eyes. The next thing I'm going to do is start clicking on all of the labels and changing them to, I'm going to go home here, to black, because everything is in gray. It makes it difficult to read. It's just going to darken it slightly, but I think that for readability, it's important because that's why we have a graph, is to interpret the data. And if we can't read it, then it's not helpful. And then down here, we'll do black. And the next thing I like to do is link the chart title to our spreadsheet. So you're going to click on your chart title or your title that you want to be linked to the spreadsheet. And then you're going to click on the formula bar equals, and you just have to link it to this, click on that mand because that's going to be our title. And there you go, mand. Now, if I wanted to change this to manding and I decided to change the label, it's going to automatically change. So that makes things a little bit easier. So we do like that. And I'm not sure if we can, yeah, so individually, again, I think I can do the equal sign. Nope, I can't. But the other thing that's missing is our labels for the x-axis and the y-axis. So we're going to go to this plus sign here for the chart elements. And I'm going to add my axis titles. And I'm also going to add a trend line. And the trend line is going to be for manding because we don't want a mand line for our phase change lines. We just want it for the data. So you'll see we have a nice little line here. So that's going to be the main things that I'm cleaning up there before we get into the formatting. And lastly, I just want to, this is not going to matter because we're going to change this. This whole graph is going to be on a chart sheet instead of floating around with our data and making it look hard to read or hard to input. So that really makes me crazy. And so our axis title is going to be sessions. And again, I don't anticipate changing that, so I don't have to link it to anything. But I do want it to be black. Is it? There we go. Same with this axis title. And we're doing tacting. So whatever measurement procedure you're using, you want to label here. So for me, I'm going to be doing number of initiations. And I don't know why it's this weird font that I do not want. So I'm going to change that to Times New Roman because I don't know what happened here. But I have to highlight it. Sorry. All right, and then here we're going to change this to Times New Roman. Sorry, I'm using a touchpad and it's like being weird. Let's see if it'll change it on its own. Yeah, here we go. And sessions, I think we just changed that to Times New Roman. All right, so now we have everything. The font is what we want. We probably need to change this too. I didn't do that on the other graphs I was working on. Oops. Okay, so now we have a nice professional looking graph, except for these obnoxious blue lines that we do not want. So I'm going to click on the data path and you'll see that all of the markers highlight. And then you can go ahead and change the color. I like to do black. And I like to do 1 point. And then that's for the line. And then for the marker, I like to do, again, 1 point. And then I do black on the border. And I like to do the fill, solid fill, and black. And I like it to be 1 point. Where is it? There it is, 1 point. So now we have these nice round dots and nice thin lines so we can really see what's happening. Now, there is a way we can change this data point being on the 0, but I don't have that information today. So if you know how to do it in a quick and efficient way, let me know. But that's not bothering me right now. So the next thing we want to look at is our maximum ceiling for our y-axis. So click on your y-axis, come over to this little bar graph thing that says axis options, and you're going to click on minimum 0 and maximum is going to be set at 100 because we're doing out of 100%, and you see it shifted our graph. Next thing, and so we're going by increments of 10, which is fine. And don't worry about the minor. It's not, we don't have anything affecting that right now. And if you want to go down to tick marks, you can do major type outside. And this way we'll have reference points for the data. Just another visual enhancement to help interpret the data. Next thing we're going to do is look at our x-axis. So we have major is 1, minor is 0.2. Again, that looks fine. The maximum is 10, fine. Tick marks, we're going to do major on the outside. So there's our tick marks. And that's looking good. So you'll see here that the line didn't come on the data path here. It's not connected because of those different phase change data points that we have in here. So we already have a nice space for that. So we're going to go ahead and do that next. So in order to incorporate the phase change lines automatically, what we need to do is click on the phase change line. So we're going to start with phase change line, phase 1, and going to click on series options. Nope. Yes. So we're going to click on series phase. And now we're going to go up to add chart element. So we're going to be in the, oops. We're going to be in the chart design part of the toolbar, add the chart element. And you're going to see an error bar, and you're going to go down to more error bar options, which is going to open up this line here. And we're going to do our, click on the drop down box, and we're going to look at, you need to look at phase 1x and phase 1y. I like to start with the y-axis so I can see the line. So you'll see like there's this weird T situation happening here. So we'll start with the y-axis, and the first thing I like to do is skip down to the fixed value. And again, our fixed value is going to be 100 because our maximum ceiling is 100. So as soon as we do that, you're going to see your line get input. And then I use the minus sign and then no cap. So we're going to start getting rid of these lines on the side. The next thing we're going to do is go up to our error bar options, and now we're going to work on the X error bar axis. Fixed value is going to be 0. And there goes those 2 lines. Excellent. Last thing we need to do is get rid of that orange marker. So we're going to click on the marker, go back to our little paint can, click on marker, and we're going to do none. No marker. And so now we have a beautiful phase change line, solid like we want it, to separate the baseline from the rest of them. Next thing I also want to do is change the marker for a baseline. So I'm going to click only on this one particular marker, and I would like it to be an open circle. So here I go, going to do no fill on the marker. So now this line looks different than the rest of them, or this marker looks different. And again, it's another visual cue of that there's something going different happening in this section. If I wanted to label it baseline, I could. All right, let's deal with these two phase two phase change lines. So we're going to click on those, go back to the series option. Again, we're going to go now to phase Y, phase 2. Going to add the chart element, error bars, more error bar options. And I'm not sure if there's another way you can get to that, but that's how I get to it. And so I start with the Y error bar. Again, coming to the error bar options, fixed value is 100 for the y-axis. That should shoot that line right in there. Excellent. And then I'm going to go to the x-axis on phase 2. Fixed value is going to be 0. That's going to get rid of our lines there. And now I want to go to the paint bar. And remember, I was saying I'd like to do dotted lines or dashed lines, basically, so that it differentiates the baseline condition or differentiates from the baseline condition. We're going to do a dash type. So we're going to do this dash, which is not working. Let's see what happened. Let's see what's happening. Oh, I think I know what happened here. Let's see. I think we're still in the X error bar. So we need to go to the Y. So let's change that. We're going to do 1 point and we're going to do dash type. There we go. And that's kind of a little bit, I don't kind of like it. I think it's too gaudy. So I'm going to go with a finer dash. Let's go with this one. Yeah, I think I like that better. So that's going to change our condition from our teaching condition to our generalization probe condition and then back to teaching. So in order to further indicate that there was a change of conditions here, I'm going to change my marker. So now you see my marker is highlighted by itself. Under the marker here, I can do no fill. And let's say I would like to do a triangle. So under marker, I will look for, let's see, that's the border, marker options. And under the type, I'm going to put a triangle. And so now you see I have a generalization probe that's separated with the phase change lines. And let's say I do not like the trend line being blue. So I'm just going to click on that and change that to, let's say, red, because I think that will make it much clearer. And I have a nice upward trend for Manding. Good job. Need to work on that generalization a little bit, but he would be ripe for another generalization probe after those 3 successful data points there. So we would probably do a generalization probe again and see how that's going. But now that you've had your graph set up all like how you want it and you're excited and you've fixed everything you need to fix and it's very happy. And again, if you want to change the amount of data you have in here, let's say you want to do like 50 sessions, again, you can just increase the number of from here. So when you need to add more data, and now I have 31 sessions. And so I can click here and I can just use this drop down and toggle this all the way down to 31. And let's see, and you'll see that our, because our phase change lines are embedded in the data, they move right with you and they do everything you need them to do. So sometimes it's nice to have all of your prospective sessions already listed on the graph. So your graph is like already in position to have like the paths that it's supposed to have, like with the, as far as like the formatting and the ratios and stuff like that. So I like to try to anticipate how many sessions we're going to have data for. Again, you can tweak it a little bit, but it'll kind of give you a better idea of like the whole picture. Like this is a 6-month program. So let me anticipate I'm going to get 2 data points a week. And so if I get 2 data points a week, that's going to lead to about 52 because it's only 6 months. And here again, I can just click on the graph. I can toggle this down to 52. And it changes the way the graph reads. And again, if you didn't want it to be at 60, you can always change this back. And let's say for the axis options, I wanted this to be at 55. But then it doesn't, it's mad at me now because this is -5. So sometimes it does funky things, but now it's where it needs to be. So again, it's going to change the way the data reads. The last thing, or the last couple things I wanted to go over is if you want to save your template, you can right click on your graph and save as a template. So the next time you have to do a chart, you know what you need to do. So we can just, let's say we can call it manding. You can call it, you know, program chart, chart exemplar, number correct. If you have specific charts for, let's say, a percentage or number correct, or, you know, whatever type of measurement procedure you're using. And so we can save that. And when you're ready to do a chart, what you will do is just go highlight your data that you want in a chart. Go to insert like you would regularly go to a chart, but instead of clicking on the charts or where you would normally go, click on this, you know, pop-out box, go to all charts, and templates is your second in the list. And then you can choose from the templates that you've made. So you can skip through all of this formatting so that you won't have to do this again. And you'll still have to make probably some tweaks here and there because the data will be different, but at the same time, like it's going to save you a lot of time in the long run. Oh, and then I see that we did not get rid of these markers. So again, we're going to go marker, known, no marker, and then that's that. So if we want to, one of the good things about Excel is they introduced a chart sheet. I mean, I'm sure it's been around for a while, but you don't have to have your chart and your data on the same page. So what you do is right click and you're going to do move chart, and you can move it to a new sheet. So I like to label mine with a CH for chart. And then I'll do chart manned. And so now you have your chart on a beautiful clean page and it's easy. And so anytime you change the data in this one, so we'll do 50 or like 40, 80, 100, enter. We can go here and you'll see we'll have new data points. So again, you can see that these are not connected. You would have to go into the data path and figure out, you know, how to connect them, probably because there's so many things in between, but again, you get the point. It's much easier to see what's happening on this chart because it's on a nice clean page. If you want to make your toolbar go up, auto hide, you can do that. You can, you know, take this off and you can have your whole chart on one sheet and really look at the data and not have it, have to export it to a different program or like to Microsoft Word or to a PDF. Like you can just look at it within Excel as a nice clean full page chart without interrupting your data situation. So I did like that. And I think that's the gist of what I learned. Signing off. Let me know if you have any more tips and tricks.